had spoken to the committee for Auckland, who had been sort of doing valiant work and had shown that we weren't pulling our weight in innovation. And so we got them together and said, well, what do you think you need? And there was a general consensus that it needed a bit of leadership. And I thought, well, I can provide that. I'm not a technologist, but I see the opportunities for it. I'm a good understander of the business implementation of it.
The New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Guerrilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.
Greetings and welcome along to the New Zealand Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Spain, a futurist with a focus on seeing New Zealand maximise our uplift from technology and innovation whilst minimising the downsides of tech in our society. This episode focuses on exactly this, looking at it from the perspective of Auckland Mayor Wayne Brown, who has become a champion of the tech sector in Auckland since being elected in 2022. We will cover a lot, including the Mayor's thoughts on how New Zealand's biggest council and its Mayor can encourage and support innovative engineers and their companies to reach their potential in the same way Rocket Lab and Halter are already doing. We'll also hear about the potentially untapped opportunities from city-to-city relationships, delegations to India, China and Brazil, the Mayor's thoughts on avoiding bad outcomes with the digitisation of local government, and we also tap in on an invitation to North Korea. This one's a really fascinating episode. I know you're going to enjoy it. Of course, a big thank you to our show partners Spark, 2 Degrees, 1NZ, Workday, HP and Guerrilla Technology for their support of the New Zealand Tech Podcast. All right, let's jump in. Well, welcome to the podcast. Real privilege to have you on, Mayor Wayne Brown.
Thank you, Paul Spain. Very good. I'm pleased to be here.
As you probably know, as a futurist, I'm very passionate about how we can leverage technology to do better for society in Auckland, in New Zealand, getting the best out of technology, hopefully minimising the sort of the negative and the downsides of technology. And look, you've been a real driving force forward for the role of technology in Auckland. Keen to hear from your perspective, what's got you fired up around, the potential for the tech sector and tech to help take Auckland forward.
Well, that's a good question, and I'm glad you've asked it. I got into Fix Auckland from a whole lot of things. I looked on from the outside before I decided I'd become the mayor that Auckland doesn't do as well as it should in a lot of fields, and so that the council itself is a bit of a shambles. We've sorted out their finances to the stage they're stable, and we've sorted out water care's finances that can carry on and do the things it does, and I'm now getting my hands on Auckland Transport so that it does things better. But I looked around from their contribution to the economy, because I'm kind of like a city country boy, and I see both sides of it, and Auckland may well be our biggest city. It certainly is, and there's a lot of the GDP, 40%, but it doesn't really pull its weight internationally in our exports as well as it should have. And we owe a debt of gratitude to the horticulture and farming sector for providing us with the standard that we live in. And I thought, what can we do better in Auckland? We don't have cows, and so we can't help the Waikato with that. And whilst we have some small areas of vegetable production, what we do have is a whole lot of fledgling tech industries, some of which have grown phenomenally, and Rocket Lab and Halter have become mega, and they've kind of done it almost in spite of the system rather than because of the system. And so I thought, well, here's a sector that we could do better with. And so we got a whole lot of them together there and said, well, what do you think's kind of missing? Is because I've led business delegations to China and India, which are the kind of the two countries that are going to matter in the future. In Bengaluru, where Raycon are already there, I saw that they had developed an ecology of innovation. And I'm thinking, now, why can't we do that here?
We've got a few less people than Bangalore, but
not a lot less. Bangalore's not that, like the Prime Minister wants to have a free trade with India. Well, that's ridiculous. No, we're only 5 million people, and they can't even count their population as accurately as within 5 million people. But Bangalore is not that much bigger than Auckland, and Karnataka is a state. It's not hugely bigger than Auckland. It's a sort of size that we relate to a lot of cities around the world with the 20, 30 million. With Auckland, we are the biggest city. So we came back and I had the idea, and we got a whole lot of people together. I had spoken to the committee for Auckland, who had been sort of doing valiant work and had shown that we weren't pulling our weight in innovation. And innovation is called innovation because it happens from where you least expect it, from the people you don't expect it to come from. And so the government have a department of innovation, which is about as useless as you could possibly dream up. And so we got them together and said, well, what do you think you need? And there was a general consensus that it needed a bit of leadership. And I thought, well, I can provide that, if you want me to. And what I can do is, I'm not a technologist, but I see the opportunities for it. I'm a good understander of the business implementation of it. I understand how to do scale, which is very hard for New Zealand. I understand also that the world is moving to a city-to-city economy thing rather than just country-to-country so much. And our country is poorly led from Wellington, but the city doesn't need to be poorly led from Auckland. It should be well led from Auckland. And so I'm offering my skill sets in terms of connection to the big cities of India and China and where that can help. And if you don't want to use it, that's fine by me. But if you can find some use in what I've got, I'm quite happy to offer that. So that's got me fired up. And I just see that with some guidance, with some help, with some understanding, and you see the amount of money that's starting to come in here now. There was 397 million came into the tech sector last year from individual risk takers. And I get a lot of Chinese businessmen come through who would throw some money at some of that stuff there, but they don't know quite how to connect yet.
Right.
And we've got a government which is sort of getting itself tangled up in some non-Chinese things, which is kind of daft in my view, but what the hell.
What are the things you think they're getting tangled up in that are a challenge?
Like in America is a military-industrial complex, and it's worked out very well for Rocket Lab, but it does mean chopping off a lot of the world if you go to one. India is not so much so that they're more likely to be in Bengaluru's tech is more in soft tech and more in the sorts of stuff that we are quite good at, which is agri-tech, small biotech, and they have offered ways for us to get their scale without it being swiped off us and dumped onto the NASDAQ and disappeared forever. And so I've got a slightly different, broader view of the world, and I'm a bit fed up with it. There's still a very lot of New Zealand, particularly decision makers in Wellington, who seem to think that the world is the English-speaking world of Australia, England, Canada, and the United States. Well, that's a very small part of the world, and it's yesterday's world, really. Tomorrow's world speaks Mandarin and Hindu. And
so that sort of city-to-city type connection, how do we make that really, really work? What do you think needs to happen to benefit?
Well, it's wide open for me at the moment, and I'm offering it, and I'm interested in hearing how the particular sector would see that they can make something out of it. But when we go to, I did a 7-city trip to China last year, and as the mayor of our biggest city, the door's open to me. I've been going there for a long time. I speak a bit of Mandarin. They're comfortable with me. And China, and to a lesser degree, but becoming more so, India is also tending to be a city-led economy. China's definitely a mayoral-led economy. And there's only one town they recognise in New Zealand, to be quite honest. It's Auckland. And so I travel with Todd McClay, who's a very good Minister of Foreign Trade and a good bloke, but he can't get to see the people I do. I know the Mayor of Shanghai, I know the Governor of Shanghai Province, I know the Mayor of Guangzhou, I know the Governor of Guangdong. These are 80 million people representatives, and their opportunities are huge. We have this kind of thing, it might be worrying they'd steal that office or something or other. They're just business people, they're pretty... There's a lot of misunderstanding about it. China's just a centrally managed capitalist country, and competition is brutal. And they allow failures to occur, and we don't really hear enough. And so there are opportunities there, and I don't know quite how, and we are seen well in both of China and India. It's not just there, there's also the American thing as well, but it's more than catered for here, I think. So I just wanted to see a broad world. People understand there's a very broad world out there, you know, and why wouldn't you go to huge countries where people, in China and India as opposed to America, the middle class are getting richer and America they're getting poorer, and it's becoming more unstable, that country, and the other two's more stable. So there's a big change going on out there, and we were warned about it by a lot of our central people, but I don't think they quite understand what it is that's going on. I mean, we're in great shape here. Tomorrow, I've also working with Todd McClay. We've got rid of those silly transit visas which were preventing trade flows between Asia and South America, because the world's a globe, you know, and the best way to get from Asia to South America is fly to Auckland and fly on. And so in the next couple of weeks we're going the first flight through to Buenos Aires, and that's going to collect a lot. When I was in Sao Paulo last year, you know, I'm mates with a guy who's got a cyber security company there, and he's quite happy to share it and expand via small companies here as well. And we forget how big those countries are. I mean, there are no big American cities. New York's only 8 million people. It's a village in China. Sao Paulo's 23. And it's a big, scary city, I've got to say, but it is a big city.
So around these sort of relationships, I remember delving into the SIS Security Intelligence Service report, you know, a few months ago, sort of warning around some of these sort of city-to-city type relationships, sister-city relationships, and so on. Do you think there's any things that we should be concerned about? Is there?
Well, I put in my opening address that I'm ignoring that nonsense. I mean,
why would they raise it if there's not a
because they've got to keep themselves
concern?
employed in Wellington. If you don't have a spectre, then you don't have a job preventing yourself from the spectre occurring. And so I got an invitation to North Korea just recently. I haven't had any particular interest in going to North Korea, but it came through the blue. And I thought that was quite interesting. And somebody in Wellington contacted someone in my office and I said, I want a briefing. So some guy came in there and he said, and I said, well, what's the problem? He said, well, we don't think you should be involved in autocratic, unstable nations. And I said, well, what's wrong with America? Because the one thing about North Korea is it might be autocratic in a horrible way, but it's certainly stable. There's been the same family in charge of that all my life. So
that's one way to look at it, I suppose. That's one way to look at it.
Well, opportunity is opportunity, you know. I look at this company from Sao Paulo. They actually now do cybersecurity for the Pentagon. And you think, how the hell? Because, you know, they don't trust anybody who's not American. And they do that because these guys rang up and said, we can break in. And they said, no, you can't. And they said, well, is it okay if we'll break in just to show you we can break in? And about 3 hours later, they're in. And they're going, holy, maybe. Because no country has a lock on intelligence. And we have a lot of it in Auckland. We have a lot of intelligent people doing amazing stuff. And somehow or other, we've got to connect them up because there isn't ecology, which is what I want. And I'm not worried about the SIS thing. I'm more worried about creating an ecology across our city where we encourage investors to take risks and things like this.
Yeah.
And there already are a number doing that, and it's good. And I admire those people because you can lose your money going to here, but you've got to lose it of a few to get one that's going to become a Halter or a Rocket Lab. And we kind of almost a risk-averse society. And this is a very risk-reward sector.
It is. Yeah.
And I want to encourage and support it in the ways that I can. And I'll provide leadership where they want me to provide leadership. But I'm not going to foist myself on anybody. You know, if they think I'm an old fool and should get out of it, that's fine with me as well. I just think that I have some opportunities which can be made, which I will make available to those people who can see some value in it. And you know, I'll run every year at least one trip to India and one trip to China. And if you haven't been there in either of those countries, it's quite formidable to sort of arrive on your own and say, oh, hello, I'm from New Zealand. I can remember the first time I went up there and started a business in China. It's not easy. But if you go with a group, and a group with some heft to it, and with some great companies doing some great stuff in China to follow along. I mean, our standard groups like Zespri and Fonterra do phenomenally well in there, and they're great users of technology to do it. Yes. So you don't have to invent Zespri. But if you're close to those guys, there'll be opportunities that they can show how, because you can't deal at the level that Zespri do. And they've been unbelievable. They had like a 35% increase in product in 1 year. And there's a lot of product anyhow. I mean, it's like in hundreds and hundreds of containers for us. That can't be done without huge amounts of high-tech support just to run it. And China is a super high-tech country. You've got no idea. Every day in China you see something you don't see every day. And so just coming along, some of those people coming along and having a look, if, say, 10 small companies came with me, probably it would frighten the shit out of about 3 or 4 of them. 5 of them would look and think, well, this is amazing, I'm not quite sure how to do this. But 2 or 3 of them will pick up something or other, and away they'll go. And the Chinese are open. And the same thing goes for India to a degree as well. I'm a bit more comfortable in China. I'm getting more comfortable in India, but I think India is one place you have to bite off bit by bit. And so I was thinking we'll just stick around Karnataka province and maybe wander into Ahmedabad, because up there you got to have it's kind of like there's a Modi side and there's the other side, and you have one of each or something or other. But in China, we've had a 35 years of sister city relationship with Guangzhou, and this is probably the biggest Chinese city outside China. So why wouldn't you make use of that? So don't put me down as pro one or the other, pro China or pro India or anti-America. I'm not any of those things. I'm just looking around and see what works for us,
So for those that are listening in and are thinking, wow, how do we get plugged into these types of opportunities? How do we get plugged into
the Auckland Tech Alliance, which I kicked off as a result of working in with the Committee for Auckland, who are good people, they were doing good stuff, kind of largely unfunded, and I admired what they'd done, and their reports were quite harsh to read in some ways. Auckland wasn't doing as well in those areas where it should have. And I'm thinking, what can I do? I'm here to fix Auckland. So get involved in the Tech Alliance. We had our first Tech Week just recently.
The Startup Week?
Startup Week, you know. More than 4,000 people showed up. It was remarkable. I loved it. I understood about 5% of what was there, but I understood 90% of the enthusiasm. And so there's those opportunities there, and if you go to those things, you'll meet somebody else who's battling away and struggling with the same thing. Quite often, small firms at the startup thing are doing something which they think no one else is doing, and only to discover their horror, someone else is doing almost the same thing. Well, maybe you get together and you've got twice as much effort and build it a little bit. It's a bit unlikely every one of them is going to be the next rocket lab, but there's a lot of growth here and there about things, and you can listen amongst. And so tech people spending some time with other tech people can't help but be good, in my view. And I was watching this, and the feedback was very good, and I didn't feel such an old sausage after all.
Yeah, no, it was a great week, and I think that's the sort of thing that helps pour a bit of petrol on the tech sector when we bring
it came
these
out
sort
of here really.
Together.
Following on the Committee of Auckland, I just thought, what can I do about this? Because we had an economic development group at the council who are kind of floundering a bit, and it's amazing somehow or other things accidentally. Many years ago, or quite a lot of years ago, I developed the South Pacific Pictures studio out in West Auckland. I had no idea that was going to become kind of like a starter for other things. And now we've got Jason Momoa and Cliff Curtis buying up this big studio out there, and there's all sorts of little startups around there associated with the film industry. And the film industry is becoming more and more tech now. And so who'd have thought that area would go that way? So I just think we've got to build on those little accidental starts and make those seeds for tomorrow, not sort of dead trees for yesterday.
Now, looking at the role of council and that crossover with technology, council's a big technology user. We're going through this journey, I guess, the digitisation of everything. That includes local government and on a national basis. It seems like there's continued progress in that area, but how do we kind of get that so we get the right balance of innovating but not doing it at the level where we end up kind of leaving people behind. We go too far AI, and then people can't interact properly with a a non-empathetic council if it's all AI driven. Cameras around the place, which are really helpful from a safety perspective, but on the flip side, people get a bit freaked out around the privacy aspects. How do you think we should steer through these things so we get the best outcomes and sort of minimise the downsides?
I think the correct word there is progressively. Organically, as we get better at bits, we just build on it. I think that's the idea of one big bang theory where suddenly we all go AI or something like this. It's just fraught with danger and a lack of reality, to be honest. And so my daughter has a company which it's just much smaller company. There's about 50 staff, or there's less now because they've gone fully AI. And I played a version of how their communication, when you ring up her company, someone answers the phone, and as long as you got a file number or a name or an address, it can go to the actual file of whatever it is that they're supplying for them. And it's pretty good. And other than the fact that it's a pleasant Australian woman, you wouldn't believe it wasn't AI. And I've challenged the council to start moving towards that. But I tell them to move towards that. Don't try and rush it and make a mess of it. And so we're making some steps with things, and they came up and had a trial with me the other day about two things, which is one is graffiti removal and the other one is illegal dumping. And we'll get those bits right, and then we can slowly progress sideways into the point, and I know about a year or so, you might be able to ring up with your building consent and find out exactly what's on the screen and where that is. But you don't want to go, if you try to do it all at once, it'll just be a shambles. And I have had experience in that in the past, but which I'll come to, and then remind me about the digital driver licensing lessons.
Yeah.
But and so we went through this yesterday, and I was happy about how they were stepping forward. But then they went through it, and then we trialled it, and they showed me what they're doing. And you go and you tap, and you can choose graffiti removal or illegal dumping.
Is this in the council app?
Yeah, it's coming onto it.
Yep.
And then they ask you, have you got a picture of it? And that's a good thing. And they send a picture in. And the picture, the AI can read whether it's removable or not removable. Like if it's, some of them are impossible and some of them are easy. And this was something sprayed on glass. And they did a trial. They wrote in East Auckland gang or something. It had the word gang, which means it alerts that this is something that should be removed, And it was quite clever as going through that. But then it asked for the address and contact of the person ringing up. And I said, why do you want to know that? Don't do shit like that. We don't need to know that. We know now where that graffiti is. Go and get rid of it. If you ask a person who's going to give it in there, you're going to turn them off. We don't need to know that. And that person probably wasn't even supposed to be there, so they don't want to be listed in there. So we have a thing whereby we try and gather too much data. Do we need the data?
That's a common issue.
And I know that if someone sends me something or other, and I go, if I get to the stage where I've got to give a password, I stop. I'm not interested. And one of the things in my 5-minute MBA book, I ask people, ring your own company up or go to your own website, and it'll probably piss you off. And don't ask for more than you need, because the world is going under for the demand in data centres. Most of it's fill up with stuff we don't need to know. And they want to do data mining. Well, you're mining sand to get more sand. Try and get some gold. And then come back to I was talking about some years ago, you and I are old enough to remember when they brought in digital driver licenses, and it didn't work. And it was a disaster. And the government rang me up to fix it. I don't know how they got hold of me, but it was a brilliant choice, not because I'm brilliant, but because my wife owned the AA outlets for Northland.
Right.
And she came and said to me, Brownie, this isn't going to work. And I said, why is it? Because she said, they're rushing it.
This the digitised but printed out?
Yeah, so you got your digital driver's licence, and it printed out a digital driver licence, and all the information was digital. And it was brilliant, excepting that they weren't ready. And so somebody didn't have the nerve to tell some minister in Wellington, look, wait 3 months. And so, when they opened it up, and then most people, 2/3 of the people bought the wrong stuff in. And the people who were running this in the centre were saying, oh, it's stupid people. And I'm saying, hang on, if 2/3 of them are bringing it wrong, there's something wrong with the instruction. Yeah. And so all those things have to be involved in this, So a lot of people have got some brilliant stuff that they're thinking up now, but sometimes somebody just standing inside and looking at it. So that's why I want everyone to get this ecology, so they talk to each other. You don't have to be too secretive about it. Whatever you're going to invent will be your product, but if you don't talk to somebody about it, it won't work. And so that's kind of my open book way of doing things. The Auckland Council is the second biggest business in the country, and we do want to grow our AI and our tech into that in a progressive manner which doesn't rush ahead and make any mistakes. So that's why we're starting with those two things, and to expand it so that in, say, 2 or 3 years, you'll be able to get your building consent without actually talking to a human. And that'll be good. But I don't want to rush it. Rushed things put people back longer than the time extra it needs to take it in the first place.
And how do you bake in those ethical considerations so that things are done in a manner that doesn't, freak people out? You look around Auckland at the moment, we've got over 2,000 sort of cameras that are sitting there. People don't know, what happens with the data and whether it's all okay or not. So there's probably an element of how you communicate, how these things get communicated. But as we go more and more digital, not only is it how we communicate what's been done, it's kind of making sure that the steps that are made are not too painful.
The council itself has got a great opportunity to lead. By legislation, councils have to consult on everything. The government announces a budget that not even the members of their own government's party know about it. It just comes out of the minister's mouth. We all go, holy shit, we didn't realise that was coming. We have to consult on everything. This is the most consulted, open organisation you could get. And so we will be concerned. Of the thousands of cameras around there, we don't control that many of them. But I am providing some leadership there again because we accidentally fund quite a lot of them through the business associations, and that they are an important resource. But how do you quite balance being made safe by being intrusive? And the government's had a big lesson of that from the police in the last couple of days, how terribly wrong they can get it.
Yeah, I think
because of council's forced openness, it's probably in the best place to do that, better than government departments can do all sorts of shit you don't know about. But councils can't do anything that we haven't consulted. Just opening library hours, we have to tell you about what we're going to do. We've got a chance as anyone to do it in a manner that people understand and see what's fair and what isn't. And it pains often to point out what we're in charge of and what we're not in charge of. We've got a big raging thing about poor behaviour by some people in the centre city at the moment. And I point out, council does places. We don't do the rules of people's behaviour. That's the government. So don't blame me for those things. So I'm hoping that just talking about the stuff and talking about how we're going to do it, it's all kind of playing this ecology of it's easy. We want to have it so it's easy to talk about innovation and where it fits in there. And innovations don't have to be all absolutely brilliant. That could be a slightly improved way of doing something.
Yeah. And how do you see, I guess, this sort of crossover between a government responsibility versus what council can do in terms of, from an economic development, perspective without doubling up?
Well, I kind of stepped in that space because the government weren't.
Yeah, okay.
To be honest. I was quite surprised to find that they weren't. And they now have, as a result of me pushing, we're going to have the government, we're talking about having a new innovation centre. They're going to put a whole lot of money into it. And it will be coming here now, which in itself is innovative. Because if I hadn't done that, it would have been in Wellington. And it would have just become a centre of digital bureaucracy rather than, this is a business town. And so we should have things that are driven from a business point of view, an employment and an income point of view, rather than kind of a management of the country point of view. So I think that's quite good as well. I've got a big, huge public backing at the moment. I may as well make use of it. But I don't want to foist it on anybody. If the sector doesn't want to hear from me, I'm quite happy to go surfing.
Yeah. So where do we go from here? And who should people be looking out in terms of who they should be talking to let's say they want to be part of these trips to India and China and so on?
Well, connect with the Tech Alliance. It's quite open what we're doing. Find out what's going. Go to some of the meetings. I mean, The fact that more than 4,000 people showed up to Startup Week was phenomenal, really. I mean, people from overseas were saying, how many years have you doing this to get it going? And I said, well, it's actually months. And we have had people in a economic development capacity at the council, and they're good people but never really had any leadership either before. They're kind of floundering around doing some things which weren't. If you say economic development, that can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. And there's not a lot of elected officials who've had a business background, to be quite honest. It's a wonder I got elected, actually, when you think about it, because I don't comply with the normal thing there. But that brings with it my advantages and disadvantages. As an engineer, we lack empathy. You should know that. But on the other hand, we're full of enthusiasm.
Yeah. Oh well, it's look, it's great to have this focus on moving Auckland forward, and I think when Auckland moves forward, that obviously helps the whole country, right? So
I think we've got an obligation to help the whole country, because rural New Zealand's been helping us, and I think that the fact that I recognise and state that is kind of helping getting rid of this sort of Jaffa idea. It's a country that relies upon a number of sectors for us to be doing well, because as a country we're not doing well. It's got to be said. We've been sliding for a long time, really, and so
a very long time. Yeah, I mean, we used to be a pretty wealthy country in the scheme of things, right? And we're probably a long way back than what we were a few decades ago.
Yeah, well, that's true, and it's time to be realistic about it. And if it's got to be me that says that, well, I can say that. I don't need to be the mayor. I'm hoping that some of the lessons from the election are learnt by the government is that if you've got clear policies and clear direction and you speak the unvarnished truth, voters will support you. And I struggle a bit with what the main party's policies are, really, other than please elect me again so I can have a nice BMW that I otherwise couldn't afford in Wellington, which is a bit harsh in some ways, but it's not actually entirely wrong. And so I want them to be a bit braver, because we've had these defensive policies and we're sliding, and we're going to have to do something about it. And we look around, and why am I keen on China? Because look at the amazing result they've had in 30 years there. And it has been mayoral-led. And I'm thinking, well, I'm a mayor, why can't I lead it? Why can't I do something about it? And I hope to succeed, but I may not. But I will at least have had a crack at it. And but I need the support of other people around. In the tech sector, they've got to guide me as well. I'm there to help. But I'm not a know-all. I don't know. I could see there's an opportunity that I would like to help as best I can. But even in tech, they dragged me around and showed me a whole lot of things. I understood about 5% of them. But I could see that there's goodness in all of them. And that's what I'm trying to help.
You seem to get on pretty well with a lot of the tech companies. I see you did a video with Peter Beck recently. How's getting rid of the cones going?
That was a privilege. Well, again, that's an annoying thing. I'm such an engineer. I commissioned a report on the cones and why we have a lot of cones. And the reason we have a lot of cones is the legislation gives you a lot of cones. So I gave it to the government and said, the reason we got a lot of cones is because you've passed legislation that give us a lot of cones. Read this and stop it. And so one of the things I'm trying to say at the Wellington is that, this is a third of New Zealand, 40% of our GDP. Surely we can make our own decisions about these things. Get out of the road, That's going down very well with Aucklanders, but not that well with Wellingtonians. But that doesn't really worry me about that. So I will be getting my hands on AT shortly. But we've just had an announcement yesterday. The government passed legislation for time of use charging, which isn't a technology, and it is a step forward. But they've done it in such a manner that we're not going to be able to do anything about it until after the next election, because they're worried about the next election, which is bloody stupid. Congestion's not waiting around for the central government election cycle. We should be getting on it tomorrow, and already it's working, because where I do have power, I've exercised it. Where I have power over that is at the wharves. I've forced the wharves to increase the charges for trucks coming in to collect containers during the daytime and reduce them at night. And there's been a 51% recent move toward increase of night collection. And that does a lot of things. It reduces It's a time of use charge. In other words, if you collect in the daytime, it's going to cost you a lot more. If you collect at night, it's a lot cheaper. And lo and behold, the trucks are also noticing that they can get 4 trips to South Down and back at night and only 2 in the daytime. And the 2 in the daytime piss everybody else off because you get a big truck in the traffic. And so it's working. So why don't we do it straight away? So we put up with this kind of electoral coyness in Wellington, which is ludicrous. We should be doing this tomorrow. But I've got to wait around for another year and then it'll go on and then I'll have been fed up with being mayor by then by the time you see it. But it's working now. It works. Get on with it. You know, we're going downhill slowly, but we need to go uphill quickly. And that requires you do something or other. So, you know, it's annoying. I'm fixing Auckland. And one thing, maybe I should fix New Zealand. It's annoying.
How do you see the congestion charge working for Auckland? We've got a lot of companies, including tech companies and startups in the city. We're driving a lot slower than we used to a few years ago. We've got the slower speed limits around the city. Does that need to adjust in line with that? Would we address some of the congestion by moving at least some of the traffic a little bit faster?
If understand queuing theory, and some of your clever people will, most engineers do, that a motor will take up traffic until it suddenly overachieves. And then it doesn't drop away a bit, it just drops away a lot because it jams up and it starts behaving like a worm. It goes a bit and stretches and it jams up. And so if you only have to take away 15% of the traffic and it'll run properly. And so this is to price 15% away from being there at that time. And there are a lot of options. A lot of traffic doesn't necessarily need to be there. The one thing that AT do pretty well is the actual public transport side of it. It's everything else they do badly. But the public transport is not bad. People will be encouraged to do public transport. It's surprisingly how little use is made of technology, Teams for meetings. Oddly enough, rural people adopted that way quicker than city people because rural people are miles away. So my engineering practice in Kerikeri had a lot of work in Kaitaia, and we didn't drive. We did it with cameras. We did it with Teams. And today I spoke to the Transport Select Committee in Wellington, and I didn't go to Wellington. I made them, and they were kind of almost, this is novel. There's a mayor up there, digital mayor, No worse than the real one.
Send your AI? What did you appear on the video?
But so your tech groups, because there you've got Teams and you all got other stuff anyhow. Tech is the first group, but the ones that will gain most from that is people who have to physically be there. If you're a plumber or an electrician and you're charging $80 an hour anyhow, and for $5 you can get there 20 minutes earlier, that's a good investment. Unfortunately, we'll go through a whole lot of inspection about this. There'll be people saying, what about the unemployed? Well, they don't need to be on the road to get into the town at 7:30 because they've got a job. We've got to be a bit tough about stuff. The things that have worked well in our past have no exceptions, like GST. It's just on everybody. We've got a GST. Okay, get over it. And you don't think about it. But petrol prices are the same for everybody, whether you're rich or poor. And so we just got to do things like that because you're trying to get a bit of a movement out of everybody. We've lost the ability to just make some decisions and get on with things a bit here. The countries that are really going ahead are quite decisive. And the thing is, if they get it wrong, they reverse it. But they do make a decision, But the idea that we're going to have the government needs to be congratulated for deciding to have time of use charge rating, but should be kicked for seeing it's going to be 3 years before we have it. What on earth is that about? Just getting past an election. Is it a good thing to do or not a good thing to do?
Well, usually if something's worth doing, it's worth doing now. Now, sometimes there's a reason for delaying because you need to work some things out in between. But that sounds like a long time to work things out. It does.
Yeah, well, I've got a couple of councillors who never do anything if they manage to put it off. But that doesn't help. And so if it's worth doing, get on with it. And if you've got it wrong, you'll find out. Digital is a choice between a dot and a number. It isn't a 0.5.
0
you get
or
on
1,
with it.
isn't it?
And so that's the sort of thinking. And your sector's smart and fast. Smart, fast is good.
It's good. Well, I don't want to take up any more of your time, so thank you for joining us. Unless you've got anything else that you wanted to add in as we
No,
wrap
and I've
things
enjoyed
up?
this, and thank you for thoughtful questions. And I actually like hard, sensible questions. That's one thing I shared with Peter Beck. He hates the sort of questions like, how do you feel about things? And I mean, I don't know. We're engineers. We lack empathy.
So, okay, on that basis, so putting aside the government and all the other things that you can't change,
Well, I am changing them. Just watch them.
Yeah, okay. What's the sort of hardest challenge that you have to deal with within, the world of the council?
Well, I think I've moved on, and to the extent now that I've learnt, I am apolitical in terms of the fact that I'm not a red or a blue or a green, or I don't join parties. And that's made it easy for me to achieve a lot more than my preceding mayors, because they were seen to have been Labor or something or other, and so the Blues went against everything because the Reds came up with that. That's a nonsensical way to do anything. And so the council's got past that now, and we have divided our councils into rational and irrational, and they've self-selected for that.
Yeah.
And so the group that generally follow the sorts of things I want to do are a mixture of Labor and National and non-aligned parties. And it's a shame that the government doesn't run that way. The idea that, my side's really good and yours is rotten, it's ridiculous. We're not playing rugby. We're supposed to be governing for the people of New Zealand. So I'd like to see a lot more of that. And it shouldn't be seen as a weakness to do that. It should be seen as what the oppositions of both sides are like dogs that chase every car. Some of them are okay, those cars, let them go. So how's that?
Yeah. No, that's good. I mean, if we can change politics, so yeah.
Well, this is politics.
It's not so
Auckland Council
polarising.
is big politics, mate.
Yeah.
To be the mayor, you have to be the most voted for person in New Zealand. You can't be the mayor of Auckland without getting more votes than quite a few parties in Parliament. This is the Eden Park of politics, and it's important. Auckland's important, and Wellington, having created this, have got to understand this is really important. And one of the first things I did was leave local government New Zealand because I didn't want to be tangled up with being the mayor of Horowhenua, whoever that is. He's probably a nice person. It's probably a lovely place, but this is a third of New Zealand, 40% of GDP. Wake up, Wellington. We're here.
Thanks, Wayne.
Thanks for having me.
Really appreciate it.
Okay, cheers.
All right, cheers.
The New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Guerrilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.